Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Today, we talk about when leadership prioritize wellness. We've heard the terms wellness and well-being being thrown around, and some people take it to mind and really launch out on these strategies and programs to increase wellness and well-being, awareness and interventions in the organizations. And others say, oh, hush posh, I don't know what all the fuss is about. Let's just focus on what brought us together in business. If there's anything pertaining to any other area of your life, please sort that out yourself. After all, you do have health cover for those who do. Our guest today is going to speak to us about the difference, and I'm talking about metrics and quantifiable, visible difference it makes to the leader, individuals, and the organization when leadership prioritizes wellness. So I'd like you, members of the 360 leadership community, to welcome Suzie Li, formerly Teete, a qualified executive coach, counselor, and seasoned HR professional. She has over 2 decades of experience across purpose-driven organizations and international teams. Suzie brings a unique blend of strategic HR expertise and psychological insight. Her journey into coaching and counseling was no accident. It stemmed from a lifelong curiosity about what drives people, what holds them back, and how they grow. Suzie is known for creating honest, transformative, and deeply grounded spaces, from leading teams and projects to supporting clients through life's turning points. Outside of her professional work, she leads with heart in her personal life, too, as a wife, mother, friend, and cooking. She is passionate about mindfulness, storytelling, and the quiet but powerful moments where real change begins. Suzie, welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Modesta.
Now, Suzie, I've known you for years, and I've admired and loved you dearly. And even before knowing what you do now, I feel that you have embodied wellness. Before I got to know you personally, in your appearance, and because I was around you, I got to see what you ate and how you lived. How did you go from HR professional, and she's written in her bio, HR professional. We're talking about HR executive for multilateral organizations, global organizations, and currently running her own practice, but also consulting for a major HR practice in Oxford. So Suzie is very humble and downplays things, but she's gone from leading at the apex of senior management to deciding what I see as, to turn what has worked for her in her personal life into her line of work. And why did you decide to do that, Suzie?
Oh, gosh, that takes me back to, wow. I think for me, yeah. I think why did I decide to do what I do now? And where I came from, and really thank you for that interesting introduction. Brilliant, actually. So I hardly recognize myself. When did I start in HR? It was in the mid-90s. Started HR. As you know, I returned back to Tanzania during that time. Worked for Japan Tobacco, that's not where I met you. I met you outside Japan Tobacco. I think you joined when I left.
After, yeah.
In HR, had my first HR experience in Tanzania. That was the making of me. I really enjoyed that experience. Left there, went into banking. And then that's when my introduction into the international development world was with the African Development Bank in Tunisia. Mm-hmm. And again, in HR, firstly working in recruitment and then leaving as in organizational design and development. That for me, the whole thing of how the mind works, how we make decisions, why we do the things we do, that was where that was ignited. And I'd always wanted to work in counseling, even back then, and even coaching. I'd always had an interest in that. And for me, returning to the UK, coming back here, and then finding you again, Modesta, in the World Bank.
I'm going to, I'm just going to plug it in right now. Suzie got me the job I have at the World Bank that I proudly put on my bio and, looked like big stuff. It was Suzie Teete who just looked out for me, Suzie Li now, looked for me and connected me to the opportunity, interviewed, and I got in. And she helped me navigate power and politics.
Yes.
While I was there. Go ahead, Suzie. Sorry for that little.
Yeah. And, again, at the World Bank, multicultural environment, which those are the places I thrive in. Coming to the UK, leaving the World Bank, IFC, and then entering Oxford HR. Again, in the heart of multicultural, it's just a melting pot of cultures where I work. And the thing is, in my work, I find that I operate at the intersection of executive search, strategic HR, because now I handle the HR at Oxford HR, coaching, my private practice, and counseling. So really, for me, and it's essentially what you're all about, I just help individuals and organizations align talent with purpose. So through essentially my transformative coaching and therapy, I essentially guide people through career transitions, leadership, development, and mental well-being. Always been my interest in that. But my leadership and my interest area just doesn't stop at work. As you mentioned in the beginning, I'm also a parent, I'm also a spouse, I'm also a family member. So being a parent, I love shaping the whole thing of resilience and also self-awareness at home, especially with two girls. That is really important. And at work and in the work that I do, I constantly advocate for inclusion, mental health, and sustainable leadership. So I would say my purpose would be unlocking potential for an individual, a team, or an entire organization. That's essentially what I do and why I got into what I do now.
I love that, Suzie. And now I want to play devil's advocate for those people who say, well, you can unlock potential without having to go into addressing mental wellness and addressing, people's well-being outside of I was going to say high and dry, right? Professional management themes. And I'm guessing you'd say, no, you cannot. And I'd like you to address that for those who say, I think we're getting too soft. I think now we're taking it too far because now these are, we're just sitting there singing Kumbaya and handing over tissues. Let's get work done. What's the difference when leadership, and I said leadership rather than leaders, right? Because we're talking about then the institution, we're talking about what's systematized. What's the difference when leadership prioritizes wellness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's almost as if, why not? You can't afford not to. Do you get what I mean? So basically, if you don't prioritize well-being in an organization, the cost of burnout, the cost of absenteeism, turnover is far higher than any investment in well-being. Yeah. It's not like what you said, it's not about the lavish perks. It's not the kumbayas, the whatnots around a fireplace. It's about being intentional with the way people experience their lives at work, outside work, and creating that balance. Ignoring it, you pay for it later. Disengagement, poor performance, high attrition, and really investing in any well-being, prioritizing any well-being in an organization obviously means that you're servicing your employee. You service a high-performing car. Why not service employees? And it means that you care. And that's what it's all about, caring for the people who are working for you and also yourself. You should also prioritize your own well-being.
Suzie, so you and I, we're cut from the same cloth. We understand each other, and we're using terms that we're assuming are understood. Now, I said prioritizing wellness, and wellness is a subset of, right? But not, but well-being is broader. Could you help us understand the difference between these terms? And then I think after you've done that, then tell us what exactly could that look like in an organizational context? What does prioritizing well-being look like? So let's say, I'm a leader listening in, right? I'm leaning in and I'm saying, so what does that look like? Because one of the things that you kept on repeating is you cannot afford not to. And you mentioned the areas that will be affected if you don't. But what is it that we're talking about? What does it look like if they were to then implement it at the workplace?
Okay, so I would say well-being is the state of being comfortable, healthy, inside and out, and fulfilled emotionally, mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually. It's about how you feel about your life, how you cope with challenges, and your sense of purpose and your ability to thrive. Okay, so that can be mental and emotional, feeling confident, calm, etc. Could also be social, having meaningful relationships, and a sense of belonging, because that's important. Spiritual, feeling aligned with your values and sense of purpose, and a balance, managing your time, energy, and also responsibilities in quite a sustainable way. There's also psychological safety that goes with well-being, especially in work environments, feeling safe to express yourself without fear. Okay, so that's the well-being side of things. What does wellness look like? Well, it really answers itself. Wellness is about the active pursuit of habits, choices, lifestyle, that lead to better health. It's more action orientated. So wellness can look like physical well-being, emotional wellness, intellectual wellness, social, occupational, and environmental. So that's more the doing part of it, the whole wellness and well-being. And what does it look like in real life? For example, in wellness and well-being in individuals, it will be, for individuals, it's saying no without guilt. Taking breaks, and it's taking breaks and not feeling bad about it. Sleep hygiene, prioritizing sleep. How often do we prioritize sleep? Not very often. Movement and nutrition, seeking therapy, coaching, or even support when needed, practicing gratitude, even journaling for those who are inclined that way, prayer or meditation. In the workplace, it looks like leaders role modeling and creating healthy boundaries, flexibility in scheduling, or even having things like mental health days, regular check-ins. This is one thing that I advocate for with the people that I work with, ensuring that there are regular check-ins with your staff, whether it's once a week, every day, once a month, or whatever. Regular check-ins focused on how people are, not just what they do. So one of the questions that I've set whenever performance appraisals are taking place where I work at Oxford HR, one of the questions that they need to ask their staff is, how am I doing as your manager? What feedback can you give back to me? Rather than it being, this is what you did and this is how we're going to improve it. What can I do to support you? The other thing in the workplace, it looks like accessing to coaching, employee assistance programs, or even well-being programs. If you can't afford those things, you can create internal well-being programs. And also in the workplace, creating a culture that values people, not just performance. And that can also look, and I mean, in life, it could also look like feeling present and connected to your purpose. Purpose is really important. We all know our purpose, but sometimes we just have a hard time articulating it. And that's why through my work that I do with people, especially on the, in the private practice, is finding their purpose, finding the why and answering it. And in life, it could also be about balancing ambition with rest. We don't rest enough. We don't take care of ourselves enough. And it's also about thriving, not just surviving, and also being in alignment with who you are and how you live. That's important. So that's what it looks like in real life. It's about really creating the boundaries and making sure that you keep to them, because you've got to protect your time and an energy.
So good. Suzie, I'm going to ask you about the kind of challenges that your clients may bring, or even people you've worked with, internal or external clients, right? What would you say as far as well-being is concerned, and how supportive their workplaces are? What are the top three issues that people bring, come to you with as a coach, as a counselor, as a therapist?
As a coach, it would be alignment with their goals and ambitions. Know exactly where they want to go, but am I aligned? And I think one of the things that I would say, the coaching and the counseling. So it's the whole thing of also balancing care with capacity. So that's another problem.
Explain that to us, please. Balancing care with capacity. What do you mean?
Is essentially, I'm not the thing about self-care. A lot of people don't practice self-care, and that can transverse to coaching through counseling. And do I have the capacity to care for myself? We normally do, but we just don't really, extend it to ourselves. Yeah. So a lot of time people overcommit themselves. They, you'll find that sometimes, even I sometimes overextend my sessions. I'm not taking care of myself, or I'm not adding any more value. So it's that overcommitting yourself, or even just saying yes when I should be saying no. Yeah. Has even left me depleted, especially in my practice. So the other thing is navigating. One of the issues, especially with coaching and counseling, is navigating the whole self-doubt and the whole thing of resistance to change. Major for people, especially even myself. I often wonder when I'm having these sessions with people, am I doing enough? Did I miss something? That's the doubt coming in. Yeah. And I think one of the things a lot of people have is everybody is resistant to change, no matter who you are, whatever. But it's now challenging that change, questioning it, and really interrogating it. That's where transformation comes in the sense that people generally bring around the same thing, whether it's, trauma or emotional or psychological issues. But generally, they're around the same in coaching and counseling. The whole thing about confidence, self-doubt, catastrophizing, self-sabotage. Those things they all appear in coaching and counseling, which I'm sure you have experienced yourself.
What is the process then to unlocking what's the, let's say, the first step? What is the first step, right, to recognizing that this is affecting you and therefore affecting you and work, and how do you help them get unstuck?
People have the answers. Have the answers. They just don't know how to get there, and that's where our job comes in. As a counselor and as a coach. It's really asking those open questions. It's really challenging their thoughts, those negative automatic thoughts that constantly come in the way, and just challenging them and allowing them to see the what if, the possibility. So that's where I say real transformation comes in, when you challenge their thoughts and allow them to also challenge their thoughts. Homework is good. Giving them homework to work on, to reflect upon. I mean, in practice, I especially coaching, counseling, I normally give them affirmations to work on based around the sessions that we have had, rather than affirmations which don't really challenge you. Affirmations would really challenge your thought process, because when humans are programmed to answer questions. So when you give an affirmation as to why is my life so, why do I feel so celebrated in my life? Your natural instinct is to answer that question in the positive rather than in the negative. Okay, so that's again where real transformation happens, when you give them a question that they need to reflect upon and answer, rather than putting an obstacle in their way. I don't know if I answered your question.
You have, and I'm going to follow it up with a question. If you can recall a client who came to you and they're stuck, and it's, it was affecting how they showed up at work and how they performed, and their general well-being at work, and you saw them through, right, the transformation. If you have any stories of a person who not only saw a transformation within themselves, but it actually it trickled over into their work as well. I don't know if you can think of any that come to mind.
I think one of the areas where I feel transformation really takes place is when in one of the service areas that I have is helping people with their career, managing their careers. And normally people come to me, either they're looking for work or at a crossroads wanting to look for alternative work, but have tried and are stuck in finding work, and are in this hole that they can't seem to get out of, and seem to be applying for jobs, not getting a response, or getting a response that's not, and wondering what's going on. And just by looking at and a lot of them are quite precious about their CVs, as you know. And when we go through their CV and I allow them to see what I see as a recruiter, as a person who's gone through thousands and thousands of CVs, and letting them know, and doing a SWOT on their CVs and letting them know, this is what we look for. When I'm looking at a CV, I like to see A, B, C, D, and E. And then if I look at your CV, this is what I'm seeing. So these are the strengths, these are the weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and this is what you could possibly rephrase. So transformation now happens when I now take one of their, parts of their CV and transform it into to make it more achievements focused. The minute they see it looking like that and answering the actual, or if they're applying for a job where I've adapted their CV for a particular job, and when they see their CV with the existing content, I've just transformed it. I've put measurable outcomes. That's when the penny drops. And people now automatically see I wasn't really answering what they were looking for. I wasn't providing an answer to their problem. And even with the cover letters. So a lot of people normally on their CVs normally put in their job descriptions and the tasks they do. What employers are looking for are wanting to know the impact that you have made in an in your current role and previous roles. What's the impact? What are you bringing to the table that we don't already have? Now, if all you're going to describe is your job description, how is the employer going to know what you are capable of doing? So that's where I would say the most amazing transformation happens. And at which stage, when people come to me, they've lost all confidence, all hope, everything, because they've been trying so hard to find a job, or there's been a lot of pushback on their CVs. And, job hunting itself, what it's like. Job hunting itself is a job in itself. But once you get into the rhythm of adapting your CV, that whole thing of adapting a CV becomes easy, because now you've got the tools. I've given you tools on how to adapt your CV. So transformation for me is when that whole penny drops for them. From not including your references on a CV. Not using not, putting every single thing that you have worked on a CV and it's 25 pages. Yes, pages is enough.
I think what's so powerful about what you're sharing, because it translates, it's transferable, is the work that you do holds a space for people to give you use the word permission earlier, for people to give themselves the permission, right, to imagine a better space for themselves, and for people to have the tools to be able to solve their own problems.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's always important because I'm making you self-sufficient. So whether I'm coaching somebody with regards in terms of leadership principles, coaching them on decision making or whatever, I give you the tools. You already have the tools. I'm just teasing them out of you.
So good.
And just making them and just unraveling everything for you. You do the hard work. I don't. Yeah. I'm just there to challenge. I'm there to question, clarify. I'm there to reflect. But really, you do the hard work when you go out there. And, and when you see, the whole thing of when somebody actually realizes that and I think the best part of my job is when you see that their confidence has been boosted.
Yeah.
Because they also, one of the things I always say to people, feel the feelings. If you're angry, if you're disappointed, if you're whatever, feel it. In counseling, that's easy to do. But in the workplace, you've also got to regulate yourself.
Yeah.
If you're disappointed in somebody and you want to give them feedback, reflect on that disappointment, name it. And then, after you've taken a pause, communicate that disappointment within the context of the work, not how it's made you feel or whatever. So giving constructive feedback is also quite a challenge for leaders. I find that those conversations are quite fulfilling when, in terms of how do I give feedback to people who have made, who have disappointed me and whatever. And it's just people have the tools, they just don't know how to use them properly. And that's where my work comes in.
And I think, Suzie, you've just answered another question I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you, for those organizations, either this is new to them, they hadn't really thought about what it could look like to prioritize well-being, their own as leaders, but to integrate it as part of the culture of the organization. This little analogy here, that honestly, it is holding a safe space for people to feel safe enough to give themselves permission to imagine a better outcome, for individuals, teams, organizations, and the tools then to bring that in place. If nothing else, I think for an organization that says, well, we can't invest much into it, that mindset and those tools, I think, could go a long way to help an organization really promote and thrive, in prioritizing well-being. Hearing you say that, it's really the space to say it's okay for me to address this. I'm disappointed. I'm going through something. I'm stuck. I'm going to call it what it is. These are the tools to ask myself questions that can help me get unstuck. I thought that could transfer well to organizations that says, well, I can't really afford to prioritize well-being. Just doing that, could be a start.
Yeah, and that honestly for me is just, how am I doing? That question, asking it, performance evaluations, in check-ins, in whatever. That is one way. And also part of those check-ins should have a component of well-being. How are you? And it's asking that question maybe in 3 different ways. How are you doing? What can I do to support you? Just as simple as that. Even if you can't afford to have all of these, bells and whistles in your organization.
Yeah.
By just creating that environment, that's leadership. By creating an environment where somebody feels comfortable enough to let you know and intimate details about themselves, that's success.
That is so good.
Yeah. Just being able to allow a person to be themselves for a moment and then carrying that through. So if you, and the one thing about it is things can be done, but again, the culture in an organization has to be, looked into, and some cultures just don't promote that. But for me, I always encourage people to be open and honest, because you're expecting people to produce amazing work for yourself and they need to be rewarded. Sometimes it's not financial, but just a thank you and just to be seen, just to be heard is enough for people.
You've given us 3 questions. Honestly, they're really practical, right? For leaders that are listening in as part of the 360 leadership community, ask people, how are you doing? What can I do to support you? How am I doing as a leader? And that, the responses from that will give you the tips on what you can do. And it might be across the board. It might be for that individual. And a simple, I see you and I thank you. It sounds so simple, but even that simple thing we don't do, right?
No, we don't. And I think one of the things that we don't have or don't allow ourselves, and this is where the permission comes in, is developing self-awareness, knowing our own values. What are my triggers? What are my strengths? What are my blind spots? Yeah. As leaders, we never ask ourselves, we don't do that MOT on ourselves, that servicing ourselves. We don't prioritize ourselves enough because, this is my target. I'm going. And then there's burnout. Yeah. So prioritizing our own well-being, physically, mentally, and emotionally, getting therapy is so important to self-care. So even a coach, getting a coach or even a therapist or even both, like me,
absolutely
goes towards self-care. Reflect, that question where somebody says, how am I doing as your manager? Reflect on that. Yeah. Am I leading from a place of strength or stress? It's important, and I think that's just something that for me, leaders need to also think about. And I also think about that because I also have to also sometimes manage people. And I also have to think about that, communication, clear communications, setting clear expectations and listen deeply. Don't just listen to the surface level. What is it that they're not saying that you're also hearing? Share. Communicating clearly means also sharing the vision constantly, bringing everybody in. Again, when people feel involved, they produce more. Yeah. Don't inspire people. That whole thing of I'm an inspirational leader. Really? Are you? Do you really inspire people to do their best for you? Walk the talk. We've heard about that. That's, walk the talk and whatever. But do you really walk the talk? Are you consistent in your actions or values? Yeah. Are you showing up with integrity, especially when times are hard? Resilient. Are you being resilient? Are you showing resilience? Apologize. One of the things that leaders struggle with is apologizing and saying, my bad. I'm sorry, I did this. Yeah. Where do we go from here? And apologizing properly, not apologizing and saying, yeah, but
I'm sorry you feel that I
exactly. Yeah. Just being that, empower, don't micromanage. There are some people who like to be micromanaged, but true leadership and for your own well-being, just empower others. If you are setting the scene clearly, communicating clearly or whatever, there is no need to micromanage because you already know how you're doing, how they're doing. So delegate meaningfully and trust your people. Celebrate wins all the time, not just outcomes. Somebody.
What's the difference between a win and an outcome?
A win could be anything. An outcome, obviously, is to the benefit of the organization. Ability, whatnot. The effort through your efforts. This is where the organization came through. Yeah. But and this is also showing gratitude, even if the outcome didn't go so well, but that person really put their all into it. Celebrate that. Yeah. recognize the efforts that people put in, because those are wins. And when people actually feel that, that they're seen, they work better. Coach people to find their own solutions. That's where the micromanaging thing I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
People to find their own solutions. Don't tell them what the solution is.
Yeah.
Find, and one of the things about it is also when people feel empowered, they rise.
Yeah.
Psychological safety. Everything I was talking about was psychological safety.
Yes.
Encourage open dialogue without fear or blame. That's the one thing that we've experienced in our lives. Having a boss who's always blaming others and not taking accountability of the team. Just blaming others for the failing and not really understanding that it's your failing too. If I fail, you fail.
Yeah.
And really understanding that. And also making a space safe for disagreement and allowing people to challenge you as a leader. Yeah. And prioritizing the whole thing about inclusion, a sense of belonging, a purpose. You're in this team because I value your opinion, I value your work, and these are the expectations. How does it sound to you? And involving people. Again, I could go on to, a lot of stuff, but really psychological safety in the workplace is always important, because when people feel that they can say, they can speak in a way that they're listened to, you've got a wonderful team on your side. Yeah. I always say, do me out of a job. I always like to know that people are inspired to progress in an organization.
I love that.
I am not precious about my job. If somebody feels that they can do my job and do it better, do me out of a job and I can leave and go and do other things.
Right. Oh, Suzie, that's so refreshing. Very, very precious few would even allow themselves to be in a space that does that. And you can't fake it either. People can tell. It's so interesting that you and I have worked together, and in that context, we had an amazing leader. And I remember, because I just wasn't sure how much to share, how much to ask, to make sure that I do things well. And she said, listen, you're a professional. We hired you because you're great at what you do. You make the decisions and I defer to you. And I haven't, and, contrasted to other experiences I've had. That was so refreshing, right? Well, you came in as an expert. You do your job. I don't need to tell you. I defer to you. Suzie, what I'm hearing you say is, both for those that say, hey, I may not have, resources to invest in building well-being programs, and for those that do, you're saying it comes back to the individual leader. Every leader, no matter what the organizational position and strategy and is toward well-being, can do this, can create psychological safety, can ask these questions, can introspect, right, and make sure then they're giving to others from their fullness rather than emptiness. Because the converse can also be true, because there are these institutional programs, and the individual then just leaves it to HR and the institutional programs rather than standing in the gap to make sure their people are empowered and thrive.
That's right.
Yeah. Suzie, is if there is one thing you'd like to say, and now this is to the leader themselves, about their well-being. They're listening to you, and maybe they were, like you said before, I've got my goals and it's, I've got my targets and it's go, go, go. And you're saying this is not sustainable. What is one thing you can say to them that they can do to prioritize their well-being? And if they wanted to reach out to you to learn more, engage you, where can they find you?
Okay. What would I say to leaders about their well-being? The thing is, leadership is demanding. It's grueling. You hold space for others, you make tough decisions, you navigate change. And often while doing that, you're also carrying your own personal load quietly in the background, hopefully.
Yeah. Mm,
The thing is, we're not machines. You're not invincible, and
yeah.
you're not the exception to the need for care. You are not. And the thing is, your well-being matters.
Mm,
Okay. Not just because it keeps you functioning, but because it fuels everything you bring to the table, your clarity, your energy, and emotional intelligence,
mm,
and your presence. And if you're constantly giving and not restoring all of that energy, eventually something breaks,
mm,
something ruptures.
mm,
Your health, your relationships, your joy, and also your effectiveness and efficiency. Burnout doesn't announce itself. It
mm.
just creeps in ever so slowly. And then all of a sudden it comes in and you can't do anything about you. So rest is not a weakness. Find time to rest. Boundaries are not selfish. Therapy and coaching is not indulgent. Okay. And saying I need help is not failure, it's wisdom, it's a strength. Yeah. Asking for help is a strength. Sitting there cowering in the background is a weakness. Yeah. And most leaders are more powerful when they are grounded, centered, and well. Yeah. And really, you lead best when you are not depleted.
Mm.
So people need a healthy you. So it's really important to prioritize well-being. And honestly, and I think people always see it as, well, I don't have time to rest. I don't have time. I've got to do this. What happens if you're not there tomorrow?
Mm.
If you're not there tomorrow, you're replaceable. You are replaceable. So where to find me? You can find me on LinkedIn under Suzie Li. I also, my private practice is LE Counseling and Coaching, and I can leave you my email address where people can find me with that. But really, I am available through LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a services page on LinkedIn for career management services, which is an area I love. I love the career management side of my work as well as the counseling. I think I love it all anyway.
You're amazing at both.
Yeah, they're both great. So that's where you can find me, and through you, if anybody wants to obviously reach out through you, that would also be another place. So yeah, so that's me.
Absolutely. We're going to share your email and your links, your LinkedIn profile, and your page on the description to this episode. So definitely they'll be able to reach out through that. Suzie, this has been wonderful. I love having these conversations with you. I love having conversations with you as friends and as professionals. You have helped me in my career, in my life. Lord have mercy. And I truly am grateful. And I think anybody who thinks to reach out, there's a question I wanted to ask, and I know we're closing, but if somebody's asking themselves, okay, so what's the difference between coaching and counseling? Because there are times that
Good question.
clients have brought challenges to me, and I say, you need a counselor, you need a therapist. This is beyond my scope. You're certified in both. What's the difference? Very quickly, and why do you say that they would benefit from both?
Okay. Counseling tends to look back to look forward. So takes things back to where you began. So counseling is past and present orientated. It's healing emotional pain, increasing self-awareness, supporting your mental health. Clients would come in experiencing emotional distress, trauma, anxiety, depression, etc., etc. And the approach to that is often with, reflection, insights, and a process focus. So the techniques used in counseling are usually, talking therapy, emotional processing, and psychological techniques, such as CBT, psychodynamic. Time frame for counseling can normally be anything from 5 days to several years, several months.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on need and depth. And really, it's really creating a supportive therapeutic relationship where I hold more responsibility for safety and containment, because there is a safety element to counseling. Now, coaching, on the other hand, is future orientated. Where I want to go, how am I going to get there? It's unlocking potential to achieve goals. You have a goal, and that's what we're coaching. How am I going to get there? And it's generally, the client situation. The client is usually mentally well. They're looking to grow and shift or even succeed in whatever situation they bring. And the approach in coaching is more action-based, forward-moving, and solutions-focused. So is counseling, but, it's quite more apparent in coaching. The techniques used there are usually goal setting, accountability, mindset shifting, those negative automatic thoughts, and various performance tools. Time frame, can anything from 6 to 12 sessions? It depends. Or you could just be one of those coaches where, leaders call on every so often and say, look, I've got this challenge. This is where I want to get to. Let's talk it out. And really, the client is the expert in their life. Whereas in counseling, the power dynamic is more therapeutic relationship, creating that therapeutic relationship, whereas coaching is more partnership, and the client is the expert of their lives. And the principles in coaching and counseling are generally the same, but the practice is different. That's it.
Good.
And I know people often get confused with coaching and counseling.
They do. And I yeah, go ahead.
So that's why they work together in a session, because sometimes I tap into my counseling. I put on my counseling hat sometimes when I'm coaching session with people, and I sort of say, where does that come from? Have you ever noticed patterns associated with this? And you sort of try and delve a little bit deeper, and it helps the session move quite. So when they realize that they're carrying something from their past into the present, it then becomes an easier process session for them. And even in counseling, goal setting, we're going to find this is the solution you want. How are we going to get there? So both of them work really well together. And I'm really blessed to be able to have both those areas in my practice.
And we're so grateful you do, because, that would be two different people that we'd have to engage. And there's you just saying, okay, I'm switching hats now, to help you with this. So thank you so much for investing in that, in yourself, because you're then standing in a gap in an exceptional way, right? As compared to if you were one or the other. So thank you so very much. And
I think one of the things that, and just to take you back, and I think one of the things, investing in yourself and self-care. I came into coaching and counseling very late in life, so late. But I was always doing this stuff in my work, and it's never too late to retrain, go back to school. I think it's important for people, and especially as leaders, we're always learning. Just sometimes formalize that learning for credibility. We're always learning, and it's never too late. And I know whenever I'm speaking on the basis that I have a qualification, I have experience. And as you've seen, a lot of people out there speak from the basis of, this is what I've picked up from the internet and blah, 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 blah. Training is hard. It's hard. And I am confident in knowing that whatever I put out there on my social media platforms, on Facebook and Instagram, it's from knowledge, qualifications, experience, research, etc. It's not just something I found and I'm just putting it out there.
It's backed.
Love it.
Thank you. Oh, this is rich, and this is beautiful, and this is helpful, and I can imagine this is going to be one of those episodes that people listen to over and over again, right? To get something different and maybe pause and do those reflection exercises and then come back. And it's really rich. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for being such a gracious host. And you've been so generous with what you've shared to help the individual leader, team, the organization. And what you've shared actually is not just for leaders, right? It's really for any individual, and it's actually for any organization, including a family unit, right? We take these and really see meaningful change and purpose-fulfilled lives. So thank you.
Yeah, it's all about purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Modesta, for inviting me on this. This is humbling, scary. I've done it now. I can go and breathe.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Suzie, for that. It was wonderful having you on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Until we meet again, remember this: you can only lead others as well as you lead yourselves. Have a great one. Bye.